Howdy, y'all. My name is Will Watson. I'm a student at Texas A&M University, as well as the Bush School of Public Policy, and I'll be doing the January 2021 video topic analysis for Champion Briefs. Now, today we're going to go over some of the background of this topic before moving on to the pro, the con, and then we'll conclude with some advice over this debate. There's a lot of stuff to unpack, so I'll try to move quickly. The topic for January 2021 is Resolve the National Security Agency, or NSA, should end its surveillance of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents. Let's start by looking at some of the history behind the NSA. The NSA officially acquired its name in November 4th, 1952, where it was originally covert. No one knew about it. It was classified. As a matter of fact, intelligence officers would commonly refer to it as the No Such Agency, or NSA. For a good timeline over this, I recommend going to the Electronic Frontier Foundation or going onto the NSA's website to read more about them. History will always help you in debates. Now, very quickly after, there were a lot of problems with its history, where the Church Committee in 1975 revealed that the NSA had been intercepting anti-Vietnam protesters. Now, this led to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978, which laid out 3 different ways the NSA can conduct surveillance, as well as the rest of the intelligence community. Now, there's 702, 703, and 704. You're going to hear these a lot. Section 702 refers to surveillance conducted on foreigners abroad. According to a Directorate of National Intelligence report in 2017, there were 129,702 surveillance. Now, that is a lot, but it's important to remember that these were people abroad. In addition, any sort of FISA, or the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, application or warrant or court has to show probable cause, even for people abroad. That's the same source I said earlier, the Director of National Intelligence. Now, that's the same standard as getting a warrant, and so people have to go ahead and demonstrate that it is more probable than not that someone is conducting malicious activities. Now, there's also 703. 703 refers to a U.S. person located outside of the United States. It's important to note that our topic is only about U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents, so 702 may not directly apply to this topic. But 703 certainly does, as it's a U.S. person located outside of the United States, as well as 704, which refers to a U.S. person located outside the United States who holds a reasonable expectation of privacy. Now, reasonable expectation of privacy is a key term here because it was originally articulated in the Katz versus U.S. court case, where the court found that the Fourth Amendment only applies if someone holds a reasonable expectation of privacy. We'll get on to that in a second. After 9/11, there was completely vindicated heightened emotional tensions, where we felt attacked, where the intelligence community felt that they had let the nation down. As a result, according to Kirk Wiebe, everything changed at the NSA after the attacks on September 11th. The prior approach focused on complying with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, while the post-September 11th approach was that the NSA could circumvent federal statutes and the Constitution as long as there was some visceral connection to looking for terrorists. As a result, after September 11th, 2 things happened broadly within the NSA. First, there was the collection of metadata. Now, metadata refers to data about data. If I was to place a phone call, the NSA wouldn't be listening into my phone call. Instead, they would know that maybe I had called Papa John's for 3 minutes at 6 p.m. December 21st. They know the information about the information. This could be key in stopping a terrorist attack, because if I had placed 12 calls to a terrorist cell in the hours leading up to a terrorist attack, they may say, oh, Will Watson's connected to them. This is bad. You can see how the metadata plays out here, but they were doing bulk collection of it, where they were collecting it in droves. That's because 9 different service providers, including Microsoft, had agreed to give them the metadata. Now, you may be asking, how can a service provider just do that? That's called the third-party doctrine, and I want that to stay in your heads. The second thing the NSA did was install backdoors into technology where they would be able to access its information and implement code, often maliciously if they so desired. Now, these backdoors could also be referred to 0 days because the hacker is the first person to know about the vulnerability or on the 0th day. So they were putting vulnerabilities in technologies as well. There were multiple controversies in 2004 about the NSA's purview, about what they could and couldn't do, but that really did die down. Again, if you want to look more into this, I highly recommend the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They have a great timeline for the NSA, as well as the NSA's official website. Now, everything changed in 2013 when Snowden, and if you don't know who Edward Snowden is, you need to look him up. When Edward Snowden revealed some of the breadth of the NSA, including the PRISM program, the bulk metadata cell collection, that the NSA had been listening to German chancellors, that they had been trying to get information about everyone. Edward Snowden's revelations in 2015 led to the official end of bulk metadata cell collection, according to intel.gov. Then on March 3rd, 2019, the New York Times reports that the phone record collection has been completely shut down, that we, under the Trump administration, had not been collecting any sort of cell phone information. And most recently, in 2020, bulk collection was deemed unlawful on September 3rd, 2020, BBC. In addition, the BBC article said that the intelligence leaders who had been making claims about the scope of bulk collection had been lying. Take that as you will. Today, the NSA's mission statement reads that the NSA/Central Security Service, or CSS, leads the U.S. government in cryptology that encompasses both signals intelligence and information assurance, now referred to as cybersecurity, products and services, and enables computer network operations in order to gain a decisive advantage for the nation and our allies under all circumstances. Two things I want you to pull from that. First, the NSA does signal intelligence, or SIGINT. Signal intelligence differentiates itself from other forms of intelligence. You may have heard of human intelligence, or HUMINT. Signal intelligence is different because it refers to the communications we send each other. If I was to make a phone call and the FBI was listening, that could be a form of signal intelligence. If I was to go ahead and send a text, buy Bitcoin, etc., those are all signal intelligence collection. But if I was to talk to someone at a restaurant, that's human intelligence collection. The NSA does signal intelligence collection. Now that differentiates the NSA from organizations like the CIA doing human intelligence collection, or the FBI, which does domestic collection, as well as prosecution on U.S. soil. In addition, I want to take a step back here and look at the universal argument behind this topic. This is a topic that addresses the concerns of security versus privacy. That should we be safe or should we have a sense of privacy? For more readings on this, I highly recommend Foucault, Bentham, as well as Kant, all of which who have written on the security versus privacy debate. Three great thinkers. There's the idea of the panopticon originally constructed in Bentham, which I won't get into, but if you want to run any sort of critical arguments, you should be reading these people. The other person is Carl Schmitt, and I'll add in Agamben with state of exception work. If you don't plan on running critical arguments, still a good idea, check it out. You never know what other teams are going to hit you with. This debate that we're having now has also been articulated in the courts. As I mentioned, the Katz case, which set up the idea that the Fourth Amendment only applies if you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, this was put to the test in Smith versus Maryland, where in 1979, the court ruled that you do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy to any data you may turn over to a third party. That's called the third party doctrine. And the implication here is if I make a cell phone, I'm turning over the metadata to AT&T or Verizon. That's the third party doctrine at work, and the government, without a warrant, could collect that data because I do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But in 2018, Carpenter versus the United States changed that idea, where Carpenter said that information that we have to live by, for example, cell phones in today's day and age, that information is still protected by the Fourth Amendment. Carpenter is a groundbreaking case, and I highly recommend that you read it. Now, the topic we're exploring today Resolve, the NSA should end surveillance of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents, has a couple of key areas. First, it's about the NSA. I'm going to be judging this topic, and I'm really looking forward to it. Keep your cases about the NSA, please, because all a team would have to do to blow up a general surveillance bad case is stand up and say, that's not about the NSA. Make your case about the NSA, and that's how you win. People will also challenge the idea of should versus would with the topic. Should refers to whether or not something should happen, not if it would happen. The idea of we should send all prisoners to Mars. Whether or not we should do that is one debate. Whether or not we would do that is a different debate. Because I guarantee a team is going to stand up and say, well, even if the NSA said that they would end its surveillance of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents, there's no way they actually would. That's not what we're debating about. This debate assumes that the NSA does end its surveillance of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents. So keep that in mind. You're also probably going to face a topicality definition when it comes to what surveillance is. Just read up on that, especially if you're running zero-day arguments. And also note that lawful permanent residents is green card holders. It's not people who have come to this country through illegal means. And I'm not talking about undocumented citizens here. I'm talking about what is commonly referred to in the intelligence community as illegals. If you look up Operation Ghost Stories, you'll see that Russia has sent people here using illegal identities. With that, I really want to go to the pro now and then the con. So, a couple of pro arguments you're going to see. I anticipate teams will run privacy. I'm not really going to spend much time on that. I anticipate privacy is just going to be a stock argument or a time suck argument that pro teams run. I think international legitimacy, where according to The Intercept, America has been hypocritical in its internet usage by the NSA, will be an interesting pro argument to see. Because how can the United States say, China, you're doing internet censorship, that's bad, whenever we're collecting this massive trove of data on our citizens' internet? So international legitimacy, possible pro argument. 0 days, another possible pro argument, where the NSA installing these backdoors into our technology makes them less secure. Now, according to the Tech Beacon, specifically Jennings in 2019, China has been able to use the 0 days that the NSA built in order to hack into our technology. So if the NSA is doing this, maybe we should stop it on US citizens because otherwise other countries can exploit it. Finally, I anticipate racism will be brought up in this debate, where the NSA and the intelligence community in general has a history of spying on minorities. Vice in 2014 says that the NSA has targeted Muslim individuals. The American Constitution Society has said that mass surveillance has historically targeted African American individuals as well as other minorities. There's this idea that the intelligence community works against anyone they view as anti-American. The key term being what they view as. So keep that in mind whenever you're debating this topic. I think a racism argument would play very well with a lot of judges and at some of the bigger tournaments. So the final pro argument that I think would actually make a really good pro overview is the idea of overloading the information, where according to Zach Whitaker in 2016, the NSA has become so overwhelmed with data it cannot do its job effectively, where they have so much broad bulk information they can't stop terrorism. So that would take out a lot of the con's offense and actually work as a pro term. Let's switch over to the con real quick. So obvious con argument here is going to be counterterrorism. The Guardian reports in 2015 that mass surveillance was needed in order to stop some ISIS attacks. There's not a lot of evidence that the NSA has effectively stopped terrorism. That could be for a different reason. That could be that we don't want to tell the terrorists what is working to stop them. We want them to keep on making the same mistake. It's kind of the idea of trust the NSA because everything that they do that's successful is classified. All their failures are public. So keep that in mind. The second area is tech development, where the NSA needs all this information in order to effectively develop technological weapons for the United States. Snowden claimed that the US and Israel actually co-wrote the Stuxnet virus, according to CBS in 2013. The Stuxnet virus you should look up because it was a very devastating cyber attack against Iran. Finally, the con could run a perception argument. Now, this could be a subpoint under counterterrorism, but the general idea is that if everyone knows that they're being surveilled, they're less likely to do things wrong. Now, there are a lot of critical implications to that, but I still think it would make an interesting con argument. The overview that I see being effective for the con is that if the NSA doesn't do it, the FBI, CIA, one of the other 14 different intelligence agencies will pick up signal intelligence. For example, according to the Director of National Intelligence, there are 4 other agencies that actually handle 702 data in the status quo. At that point, it's likely that the NSA ends its surveillance, someone else picks it up. And if the con can make that impactful by saying, oh, well, they would do it worse, that could be a really good con path to the ballot. Now, I've taken up a lot of your time so far, so let's quickly go over some of the tips and tricks. First, there's still a topicality question with surveillance. You also need to make sure that your case is specific to the NSA. I can't stress this enough. Lots of teams are going to just generally say surveillance. Surveillance, the NSA does surveillance. Not all surveillance is done by the NSA. Keep that in mind. Second, know your history. You need to know why the NSA was founded, what the NSA does, what differentiates the NSA. And finally, I could see a lot of teams accidentally double turning themselves on this topic. What I mean by that is that the pro stands up and says, oh, the NSA overloads itself and becomes ineffective, while at the same time saying the NSA the NSA not working is a good thing for whatever reason. Smart con team would stand up and say, but wait, if the NSA isn't working in the status quo, and you said the NSA shouldn't work, doesn't that mean that we can just keep things the way they are and avoid X impact? Be careful with that. To conclude, make sure your case is specific to the NSA. Remember that this has been an argument that has happened before. Specifically, policy, I think, debated this in 2015. I think there was an additional public forum topic a couple of years back on that. So if you have alumni, reach out to them. They probably have back files. But those back files may be about phone collection. Remember, phone collection has ended to our knowledge. Make your case specific to internet collection, and you're going to win the round. So with all that being said, best of luck to everyone. I hope you have a successful competition season and stay strong.